Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today we're going to be pruning this ninebark. Ninebark is a native plant, and while it does flower, we've got one remaining flower here. The flowers are not particularly big, and you really don't grow this shrub for the flower. And once it has flowered, they then tend to little seed pods, sometimes called fruits, which the birds will love. But frankly, when you're looking at this shrub in the summertime, because the color of these fruits are so close to the color of the foliage, you tend not to notice them. And likewise with the flowers not being particularly big, it's only when it's in full bloom that you notice you have flowers. So folks, grow this native plant for its lovely color, and as we get down into the center of the plant, you'll understand why folks grow it. They grow it for the attraction of the bark. And the story goes that it got the name ninebark because in order to peel an entire stem, you would take off 9 little strips of bark. So that's how it got its name of ninebark. We have an earlier video of pruning a ninebark while it is dormant. And you may say, well, wait a minute, if this is a spring bloomer, why do we prune it while dormant? And that's actually the primary time to prune. And the reason is, at that point, you can see all the structure. You don't have this foliage, and you can see all the canes. Being a cane shrub, it needs annual pruning. So it's best to come in while it's dormant and take out the oldest, thickest, fattest canes. And then when it's done flowering, which is where we are now, because frankly I think there's one little lonely flower in the front here, is the only flower left on this whole shrub. Then we come in and say, well, does it need a little bit of shaping? Does it need its size reduced a bit? And I would say no, this is about as tall as it's going to get. What it really needs post-flowering is some thinning for airflow and sunshine. And as you can imagine, being a cane shrub, we are going to start that process by going to the bottom and reducing the number of canes at the ground, which will take out some of these. We aren't going to know exactly which ones, but we will thin starting at the base of the cane and then come back and see does it need any other shaping. So I'll refer you to the handout, but again, ninebark is one where you can prune it while it's dormant, and I personally have a ninebark and I do my primary pruning while dormant because I can see the structure. If it is really healthy and you get a lot of growth following that, then you come in post-flowering and do some thinning for airflow and sunshine, and if necessary, a little pruning for shape and size. So let me get rid of the clipboard and we'll go down to the bottom and get started, and we'll show you what that bark actually looks like. In conversations with the homeowner, I now know that this plant is about 4 years old and it has not had an annual pruning. The only pruning it has had is where it has grown out over the sidewalk. It got trimmed back. So the first thing I need to do is, you can see I have a fair amount of dead material in here. So it's 4Ds. I'm going to get the 4Ds out of here first so that they're not poking me in the face. And then we'll come back and hopefully by then we can show you what the bark on the ninebark looks like. So you know how to remove 4Ds. We're going to take the dead off as low as possible, as far back in here. Probably can't show that on the camera. So we're going to shut the camera off so I can get this dead stuff out of the front of the plant, and then we'll come back and show you how to do the rest of the pruning. I promised to show you a stem, so here's one that I've removed. And when you look at the bark, as we come up along here, you can see how if you want to peel it, it's going to take a few times to go around and peel all of that off. And it just naturally sheds it that way. That is not a disease. That is what the plant does. It is a feature, not a problem. So this is what it should look like. Now, I've gotten most of the dead out of here, And in the process of doing that, I have now found that we still have quite a few crossing rubbing branches. And there was one here that I took off actually to get this, and I took it off as low as I could, but I'm going to have to go around to the back side of the shrub to make the final cut closer to the ground. There's no way that from the front I can get back and make that cut, and we can't get the camera back there. So let me just try and show you that here is where I made the cut, because that's what I could reach from the front. And then when I follow that back, it's rubbing this other very major stem, which has lovely peeling bark. And so I want to get that out completely, and I'll have to make that cut from the back side. I've been working on the left side of the shrub, and you can see how much thinner it is now. There are a couple of things I would point out. Do not worry if you break one of these canes, one of these branches. That just happens. And in fact, here I did exactly that. I bumped it, it broke. So we're just going to take it off right back at the branch node. The other thing, my first emphasis was to get the dead out, and then I went after the crossing rubbing branches. And then last but not least, while I was down here, I know that this plant is next to a sidewalk, so I also shortened some of the branches so that it's going to take another year or so before it grows out into the sidewalk. And by that time, being a cane shrub, the base cane to which that is attached may be ready to come out. So on this side, this almost looks like we have two plants here, but it's just one big clump, half of which has been pruned. And there were a few things that, you know, when I just touched them, they went crunch. They were clearly dead. I would say because this hasn't been pruned, it has a few more branches that want to go straight up. They're just looking for sunshine, so I'm going to take a few more of those off, which will help to thin out the middle. We need to keep the sunlight coming into the center of this plant. And if it hasn't hardened up into and gotten woody yet, it might not. It may just stay green. But as you can see here now, this is much thinner, if I scoot back, than this right side of the plant, which is where we will go to work next. As I explained, we've thinned out the left side of the shrub. Now we're going to work on the right side of the shrub, and I've moved to the back. So while you can't see me particularly well, you can still hear me, and we're going to try and focus and explain a few more things of what we've done and what we're about to do. So as I mentioned, you can prune this shrub while it's dormant, and that's when I like to prune mine. That's when I generally take out the biggest, oldest, fattest canes, because without the leaves, you can see the entire structure of the plant. Now on this side, we've got a really old, thick cane that I think once I take that out, it's going to open up the entire side of the plant. And again, being a cane shrub, every year you should come out and take out the biggest, fattest, oldest canes. After this post-flowering pruning, next dormant season, that may only be 1 or 2 canes. But this one right here, which comes up and has lots and lots of different branches, is the one that I'm going to take out. And it's bigger than I can do with loppers. So I do have my folding saw today, and we're going to turn the camera off. I'm going to make this cut. I'll open it up, but I'm going to make this cut as low as I can possibly go, starting right about here. I've made that cut with my saw, and this is easily an inch, inch and a quarter in diameter, and I'm going to attempt to push this out. We'll stop the camera to get that removed. And having made that one cut, this thing is almost thinned out enough. I see 1 or 2 more cuts that I can make over here where there's an extra branch that's got some broken material on it, and it wraps around on itself. So we'll get that out of there. And from this perspective, I also see a little bit more dead stuff that I can take out, and it goes crunch when I grab it. Here's one that wants to grow right back through the center. We never like those in a especially on a cane shrub. We don't like those. But taking one cut out of the side of the plant has opened this up tremendously. So the last thing, I think, aside from an additional inspection, a little bit more dead, is for me to stand up and look and see, do I really need to do any reduction cuts? Do I need to shorten the height anywhere? So let me get out from behind here and see if, there's, and I always keep finding one more piece of dead material. But let me stand up and we'll see if we need to make any reduction cuts on the height. This is that one big cut that I made on the right side of the shrub that opened that side up completely. But again, here you can see the interesting bark. This is a feature. This is not a sick plant, but this is where it got its name, Ninebark. But it had all this growth on it, which is a bit much for a cane shrub. So the key on the cane shrub is to prune it annually, because this is a rapid grower. And as we pan back in towards the base, you should be able to see the base of the plant. It shouldn't be totally hidden by all the vegetation, which is the condition we had when we started. And while we have such a pile of debris to clean up. And now, they do get about 6 feet, and probably my biggest concern is which of these branches are going to grow out into the sidewalk. So I'm going to come back and add a branch node, snip some of these that will probably, by the end of the season, be out over the sidewalk again. So this is pruning for shape and for size. And this shrub, it's not uncommon for this shrub to get 6 feet tall, but here's one that's really kind of wispy. So let me cut it back at a branch node. Get that out of my hand so you can see what I'm doing. Here's another tall one, so I'll just reduce this. And again, I'm making a cut at a branch node. The last thing you want to do with a cane shrub is to get out the hedge trimmers and just go around and make it look like a mound. That's not its natural shape. The branches are different lengths. So try not to cut them all back to the same height. Cut them back to different heights. But always cut at a branch node. Let me walk around to the other side here. And again, we've got shrubs behind us, so I'm a little concerned about things growing into the adjacent shrubs. So again, I'll make some reduction cuts back to a branch node. And yep, this one back here is trying to find some sunlight. So it's growing out the back and curling back around towards the front. So we'll just take all that extra off and let it grow directly towards the sunlight. Now I'm standing here. Yeah, that's probably, well, we'll just shorten that a little bit. And some of these pruning cuts may cause it to put out a little bit of lateral growth. But we'll make a few more snips. And walk around your plant. We're a little restricted in how much we can walk around here. But always walk around and look at your plant from different angles, because you will see different things. It will look different from one side to the next. Okay, and here we've got one that grows out and then wants to circle back into the branch behind it. So I think I'll just take it off all the way back here at the major connection. I'm going to walk back out here in the front. This is probably going to grow into the sidewalk, as this will. This might. So we'll just keep it about a foot in from the sidewalk, because it is fast growing. And by next summer, it'll be back in hanging over the sidewalk again. I think as I walk around this plant, if we can pan from the left to the right, you can now see in here. So one of the things we noticed was that deep in the center, like here, this vegetation doesn't have that lovely maroon color, and it's because it wasn't getting any sunlight. So these stems that have mostly green leaves should start to color up now that they start to get some sunlight. And then the key will be next winter, January into February, come in and look at the structure and take out 1 or 2 of the oldest canes. We've pruned this pretty hard today, so it may only be 1 or 2 canes. But being a cane shrub, it's always going to be putting up new canes. So taking out an older cane is not going to hurt it, not going to reduce it. And now I think I can stop. This is one of those where I could just keep going and going, but we'll let the plant alone for the balance of the summer. But again, the Ninebark is a native plant. You could put it in a rain garden. It will grow in most soil conditions. Being a cane shrub, it is a fast grower. Being a cane shrub, it really needs to be pruned every year and sometimes twice. Once while dormant and then again after flowering. So we've given it a really good post-flowering pruning. These green leaves should start to pick up some of that maroon overtone, and then next dormant season it can get another little cleanup, which will not be anywhere near as drastic as what this was. So that's the Ninebark. Hope you learned something today, and we thank you for joining us.